The first thing I noticed wasn't the suitcase by the door. It was the way she was holding herself together with both hands. My ex's mother sat on my couch like someone, trying not to take up space. In a room she had no right to enter. Her coat was buttoned wrong. Her hair, always neat when I'd known her, had come loose around her face. She looked smaller than I remembered, as if one terrible night had taken inches from her. When she saw me standing in the doorway, grocery bags slipping from my fingers, her chin trembled. "I needed somewhere to go," she said. For a second, I thought I'd heard her wrong. Of all the people in the city, of all the doors she could have knocked on, she had ended up at mine. 3 years earlier, her son had shattered me so cleanly I'd thought I might never fit back together. We had been engaged. We had booked a venue, argued over flowers, laughed over baby names we weren't ready to use. Then one Tuesday afternoon, he called to say he'd met someone else and didn't want to drag it out. No apology worth remembering. No explanation that made sense. Just the sound of my future closing like a slammed door. His mother, Linda, had called once after the breakup. She cried, said she was ashamed, said she loved me like family. I was too hurt to hear it. After that, we became strangers connected only by old photographs and silence. And now she was in my apartment. I set the groceries down slowly. "What happened?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her fingers twisted around the strap of her purse until her knuckles turned white. "I left," she whispered. "I should have left years ago, but tonight I finally did." The room went quiet except for the hum of my refrigerator. I knew about her husband in the vague, careful way people know ugly things but don't say them aloud. Richard was charming in public, the kind of man who shook hands too firmly and told loud jokes at barbecues. But sometimes Linda's smile had looked practiced. Sometimes she flinched when he raised his voice. Sometimes bruises bloomed beneath bracelets. Back then, I'd noticed and done nothing because it felt impolite to name. Another family's pain? Now that pain was sitting on my couch. "Did he hurt you?" I asked. Her eyes filled instantly. She nodded once. Anger flashed through me so fast it made my chest ache. Not at her. Not even only at him. At every holiday dinner where we all pretended not to see. At every moment, kindness was withheld because truth was inconvenient. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. "You're safe here." The words surprised both of us. She covered her face and sobbed. I had imagined 100 times what I would say if anyone from that family ever needed something from me. I'd pictured coldness, distance, the satisfaction of refusing. Instead, I found myself making tea. That's the strange thing about pain. If you let it harden long enough, it becomes a cage. But sometimes another person's suffering cracks the bars, open before you even realize you're trapped. Linda stayed the night in my spare room, the room I used mostly for laundry and unopened boxes. I gave her clean towels and an old t-shirt. She thanked me for everything, as if I were doing something extraordinary instead of basic human decency. At 2 in the morning, I heard her crying through the wall. At 7, I made pancakes. She stared at the plate like she didn't know what to do with kindness served warm. "You don't have to keep thanking me," I said. "Yes, I do." Her voice was rough. "You owe me nothing." Maybe that was true. But debt had nothing to do with it. Over the next few days, pieces of her story came out in fragments. Richard controlled the money, controlled the car keys, controlled which friends she could see, what she wore when she was allowed to speak. The violence had started small years ago. A shove, a grabbed wrist, a hole punched in a wall beside her head. Then came apologies, flowers, promises. Then worse things. The night she came to me, he had thrown a lamp that shattered inches from her face. She waited until he fell asleep, packed one suitcase, and left. "Why my place?" I asked gently one evening. She looked embarrassed. "Because I knew you would open the door." I laughed once, bitter and soft. "After what your son did?" She met my eyes. "Especially after what my son did. You were the kindest person I ever knew." I didn't know what to say to that. Her son hadn't recognized my kindness when he had it. Maybe kindness often goes unseen until it's the only light left. The next week became a blur of practical things. Helping her open a new bank account, driving her to a legal aid office, sitting beside her while she filed a police report with shaking hands. We bought toiletries, comfortable shoes, a phone under her own name. Every small step seemed to return a piece of her to herself. One afternoon, while we waited in line at the pharmacy, she said quietly, "I used to think surviving was enough. And now? Now I'd like to live. I squeezed her hand. Then came the call I knew would happen eventually. My phone lit up with Daniel's name. I hadn't seen it on my screen in years. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Instead, I answered, "What?" His breath came sharp through the speaker. "My mother is with you." Not a question.
Yes.
"You need to tell her to come home." I almost laughed at the word need. "She doesn't need anything from you. That's between my parents." "No," I said, surprised by my own calm. It became everyone's business the moment. "Your father started hurting her and everyone kept pretending not to notice." Silence. Then, "You don't know what you're talking about." I thought of Linda sleeping, with the bedroom light on because darkness made her panic. I thought of the bruise on her shoulder shaped like fingertips. "I know enough." His voice cracked then, and beneath the arrogance I heard something else. Fear. Maybe guilt. Maybe the sound of a son realizing cowardice has a cost. "I didn't know what to do," he said. Neither had I once. "Start now," I told him, and hung up. That night, Linda found me on the balcony wrapped in a blanket. "Was that Daniel?"
Yes.
She nodded as if she had expected it. "I failed him too," she said suddenly. I turned to her. "No. I taught him to accept what he saw in that house. I taught him silence. You survived what you could." She shook her head. "Survival can still wound other people." The honesty of that hit me hard. Healing, I realized, wasn't about pretending innocence. It was about facing the damage and choosing differently now. A month passed. The woman who had arrived, crumpled and apologetic, slowly disappeared. In her place came someone steadier. She laughed more. Slept through the night. Bought bright yellow curtains for the spare room because, she said, she wanted to wake up to something cheerful. Then one Saturday morning, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a lease agreement for a small apartment across town. "I got approved," she said, smiling through tears. "It's mine." I hugged her so tightly we both cried. On moving day, we carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs and nearly died laughing over a bookshelf we assembled backward twice. Her new place was tiny, but sunlight poured through the windows like blessing. Before I left, she pressed something into my hand. It was the old silver necklace I had worn when I was engaged, the one I thought I'd lost years ago. "I found it after the wedding was canceled," she said. I couldn't bear to throw it away. I think I was waiting for the right time to return it. I stared at it in my palm. For years, that necklace had symbolized humiliation, abandonment, everything broken. Now it felt strangely light. "You keep it," I said, closing her fingers around it. "Sell it, melt it down, turn it into something new." She cried harder then. "So did you," she whispered. A few weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. Not from Linda, from Daniel. It was short. No excuses, no rewriting history. Just an apology for the harm he caused me, for failing his mother, for becoming the kind of man who confused comfort with goodness. He wrote that he was in therapy, that he was helping his mother with legal fees if she wanted it, that he didn't expect forgiveness. I read it once and set it aside. Some endings don't need reunion. Some apologies are gifts best accepted from a distance. Months later, Linda invited me to dinner at her apartment. She had painted the kitchen cabinets herself and burned the first batch of rolls trying to impress me. We ate takeout on paper plates and laughed until our stomachs hurt. At one point, she looked around her little home and said, almost to herself, "Peace is so quiet." I knew what she meant. When I walked in that night and saw my ex's mother on my couch, I thought life was reopening an old wound. I didn't understand it was offering something else entirely. Not revenge, not closure. A chance to choose compassion where pain had once chosen me. People talk about kindness like it's softness, like it belongs only to saints and easy moments. But sometimes kindness is carrying boxes up narrow stairs. Sometimes it is making pancakes for someone who can't stop apologizing. Sometimes it is answering the door when history says keep it shut. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the person you save helps save you too.